Welcome to tonight's edition of the Evening Review. My name is Tewan Jabala, your host for tonight. Let's quickly look at the front page of Namibian Sun. So tonight in the studio, I'm joined by Dr. Tobie Aupindi, who is a Swapo member of Parliament and also a Swapo member of the Politburo and the Central Committee. Doc, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited.
Yeah, sure. Doc, we get to know you broadly at a national level from your time at the NUW. NWR, sorry. Yeah, I was confused there too. But you left in 2011, I think.
2010.
No, 2010.
Yeah.
4 months prior to the expiration of your contract. Yeah. What have you been up to since then?
Well, I've really gone global trotting, been in Houston, been in Dubai, in the financial industry, global capital market, financial market. It was just really a learning curve. I kind of like went on an expedition where I wanted to learn how does the world deals with economic issues, economic solutions to their problems. Yeah. How did most of the big economies like the US, Dubai in particular, which I'm very passionate about, how did they reach that ultimate growth end result in such a short period of time? So that's really, and then of course the energy industry, very much linked to Houston, and which is petroleum exploration and operations. So that's really what I've been, up to, so. It's been a good, worthwhile cause.
Indeed. Are we getting any oil in Namibia soon? Well, since you're in that space.
Yeah, with Namibia, one person has to realize that you have to focus on shooting more data, shooting more geophysical data that will make you understand the geological formation and geophysical, real life situation on the ground. Yeah. And drill more, because people mustn't, just because there was a few dry wells doesn't mean it's not there. It's just a question of finding a commercially viable reservoir, drilling it, and eventually, putting Namibia on the map, And I have no doubt that the petroleum resources are there. All the data that we have shot, that our colleagues in the whole industry have shot, the petroleum industry is going to flourish. We just need to stay at it. We need more investment, of course, in the sector, because, as you know, government doesn't allocate, I think, resources there. But private capital will come in, and people are going to eventually drill more and more, and then we'll discover petroleum in Namibia.
Indeed. And just speaking of that, Doc, when you speak about private capital being injected into this industry, might be up until the breakthrough moment comes. Where does it leave? How do other countries, having gone around the world yourself, will we have a key resource in private hands, or how does government get involved in that space?
No, actually, Namibia, of all the experiences that I've seen everywhere, even in the US, Namibia has the best regime in terms of petroleum sharing, because first of all, they have an open-ended tender. And I think maybe it's also a question of how people disseminate information. And maybe ministries need to come out more and communicate these things so that more Namibians can join the sector. Because Namibia has an open tender. Literally you walk in, you choose what you want, and you go and work on it. But in terms of your specific question, is that the petroleum contract, petroleum agreement gives the sharing between NAMCO and the company. NAMCO, of course, representing the Namibian interest. But on top of that, government get a big loyalty. And the ministry has been very, very stubborn in a positive way to insist that Namibian must be part of the petroleum sector. So no one can really get a license here if you don't have Namibians in there. Like I said, it's more about people not really understanding how does the process work? And maybe if I have to say something, is that ministries need to come out, share more information with Namibians so that they really come out and go after some of those licenses.
Indeed. And congratulations, Doc, you are in Parliament now. Have you always harbored political ambitions? How did you end up? You caught everybody by surprise.
It has been a long journey that took me 40 years, but I have never really thought I would be in this unprecedented position, a very privileged position for that matter. My history started in exile when I was brought up in the camps. People like me, I didn't really have a very good upbringing. We were brought up in the war, where every day we lived in the bush in Angola, and we under the Swapo, of course, refugee supervision in camps. We survived, we thrived. Every day of our life, it was always living in fear. We were surviving the war. It was running in the bush when the enemy attacks. And also I was brought up within that brutality of being a refugee. So I moved from being a refugee to a citizen, and eventually, so the entire Swapo political dynamics have never really been far from me. It has always been there. So I came with that from exile, and I thought that in my own little ways, because Swapo led from exile, Swapo fought from exile. Sometimes we forget that people literally died for this country to be the way it is, and there is no need to apologize for that. The fact is that we have heroes who died, and we need to honor them. And I feel that I'll give something back if I remain within the structures of Swapo, so that their voices, I know people who died in exile. Some of them kids that were with me, some of them adults who were shot in the war. And I feel that for me it's not even financial, you know, it's because you don't get financial resources there. It's a question of representing their voices whose blood waters our freedom, and ensure that the opinions, the purposes that they lived and eventually died for will continue to be relevant and active in us as we move on to also pass it on to the next generation of leaders that are going to follow us. That's why I actually stood up and be part of the Swapo structure that brought me to Parliament.
Indeed. And many would actually perceive you as a rising star in Swapo, that new wave of generation, younger generation. You, if I remember correctly, I think you were number one on the list of Politburo when the Politburo.
Yeah, the CCI was number 6 on the men's list, and then eventually to the Politburo. Yes. Then I think the first person who was elected.
Precisely.
Came,
Precisely. To what do you attribute that?
It's people have all these different opinions about me, which it doesn't really matter to me. What matters to me is that the brand name of Swapo should continue to be relevant. And for me, I attribute that to the men and women of Swapo who are serving Swapo's brand value proposition in the regions every day of their life, in districts, in sections, because people forget that the formation of Swapo starts with the sections. And it's those people that have elected me and have confidence in me. And eventually, it is those people that I would continue to honor, respect, and trust, and seek advice and counsel. It's a question of being true to who you are, no matter what, because what people forget is that, life is full of challenges, but if we remain true to who we are, we remain strong, even in times of adversity, in times of challenges, in times of difficulties, eventually we will find our own path, our own peace, in our own moment, and God will propel us to achieving our own purpose.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Because of that, Doc, having really been elected by so many people in the Central Committee, and then eventually becoming sort of getting the most votes for Politburo, there was a legitimate expectation among your supporters and others that somehow you should be in government, and now you are not. Of course, Parliament is government, but not in cabinet, for example. Yes.
Not quite, because they, like I said, for maybe others are doing it for career. For some of us, we lived in the whole. My whole life has been a journey of pain, of sacrifice, of being, pushed around, but standing my ground, because it's a miracle that I'm even standing here talking to you. I should never have survived the war. The people that we left in Angola there, and Zambia, and many places where Swapo was fighting from, none of us, those of us who survived, is just a smaller number. And it was just by a miracle. And therefore, every day you thank God. Those who therefore seek for maybe titles, in terms of government opportunities, would have probably preferred that they are in cabinet. But in terms of structural response, cabinet is the prerogative of the head of state. He chooses the warriors that from within the Swapo warriors and other warriors that are going to service his sectors in a particular time, but we work as a team, mind you, because remember, I'm a member of a political bureau of Swapo, and also a member of Central Committee, and at the same time a lawmaker. So Swapo is not in isolation, it's not a one-man show. We pass policies at our policy conference of Swapo that eventually are transformed and translated into the Swapo manifesto. Politburo is the executive arm of the party, which basically progressively manage the pragmatic programs of the party, and Central Committee being the highest decision-making bodies between congresses. So we are all in it together. Even if you are not in cabinet, it doesn't mean that your voice is not being heard, or you are not formulating policies that are going to change people's lives. So it's one chain reaction that's connected, and that must operate as a team in order to captivate the end result, which is delivering development to the Namibian people.
And in terms of impact, because now you are because that chain that you just articulated, so you are making laws already from policies from the party point of view, then you come to Parliament, you make national laws. The impact can't be the same, Doc. When wouldn't you be better when you're in a position actually to actually implement these things, to say, okay, Parliament has made the rules, I'm now a minister, I'm thinking of your mind, your brains, and what you actually can do, given your track record in leadership, that a lot of people actually expect Tobie Aupindi to be on the ground and not in Parliament.
I will always, the one good thing is it's not cast in stone, because I will always be available
Yes.
for any deployment whenever my party calls up, as I am already deployed,
Yes.
in both the Central Committee, the Politburo, and the Parliament.
Yes.
But that's also not the end game.
Yes.
Because we are a moving train. Realignments do happen.
Yeah.
And I'm still at the disposal of the party for any deployment that the party would feel like
Yes.
I need to be deployed. All I can tell you is that when I'm deployed, I unleash my full potential and give my all to the cause, and ensure that I serve my party to the best of my ability, because serving the party is also serving the Namibian people.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Let me just pick your brain on something quickly, Doc, before we proceed to other things. When you are in the leadership of the party as a member of the Central Committee and Politburo, what is it that the party, I think Swapo is in a very critical moment. That's why the president consistently talk about introspection.
Yes.
What are the issues that you think the party must introspect on and move and emerge stronger?
Well, historically, it's got a historic and a historic aspect to it. Historically, liberation movements all over Africa and all over the world usually are always faced with the challenges of being both liberators and flag bearers for economic development. So what the president is really talking about is the renewal of our party. There's no question that if you look at the way we have performed in the last election, we have performed, we have realized a reduction in our popularity as a party, reducing about, I think it's 15 or so seats. And that is just, the president is trying to say, we are a party that is always going to be listening to the Namibian people.
Yeah.
So if they send out a clear message that, listen guys, you have been too complacent here and there, we have to listen. Now, what do we have to do about it? What do I think should happen?
Yes.
I feel that for Namibia, you have to introspect in a form of looking at the market economy. Now, if you want to change your strategy, your views, and the process in which you are moving forward, I think you have to, and therefore deliver the much needed economic emancipation that people are waiting for. Having the knowledge that we inherit, 30 years ago, people tend to forget. Namibia suffered the longest history of colonization on the African continent, over 100 years of German imperialism, and then of course followed by the English, and therefore the South African Dutch apartheid, which has many of the relics of that system. As much as we would want to have wished them away, many of those relics are still existing today. And what the party's program has always been about redressing past injustices, past imbalances. Maybe not to the satisfaction of the way we also wanted to. I can tell you right now as a member of Politburo that I feel we can start going faster, and that's what the president's talking about. Now, in terms of the market economy, it's not, if you look at it, a lot of people would believe that and want to think that consequential change, and we all know that, has to be about the market economy. How is the structure of the market economy? Does it represent the ordinary Namibian person, man and woman and child? And many of the global supply chains that are attached to Namibia are importing their own supply chain within your economy. And this is what many people don't realize. And when those supply chains come into your economy, it means you are invaded by global forces. And what you need to do now is to redefine those structures. You need to redefine and change the entire structure of the market in its entire context, so that more people in our country have more access to more markets in more ways. And as you do that, you activate, for example, the aspect of small and medium term businesses, because the engine of economic growth
Yeah.
in any economy, whether it's the US or Dubai,
Yeah.
is always small and medium-term businesses.
Yes.
And we need to ensure that
Yeah.
those supply chains, global supply chains that are basically imported within the system and being maintained at a global level by the Namibia.
Yeah.
So which means many of these SOEs don't have access to the supply chains and value chains. So we need to ensure that our SMEs, as you can see, they've sort of like just been relegated to primitive form of production, and these supply chains are vanguarding their corporate and global interests. We need to ensure that these SMEs have been given an opportunity to this supply chain, and we need to ensure that we have generalized innovation and education so that we deliver much needed economic emancipation in Namibia, and that is part of renewing ourselves, becoming relevant within the context of a changing world. Yeah,
indeed. You spoke about business, and I'm thinking you led the Namibia Wildlife Resorts for some years, and you have noted. I've worked with you at NWM, as a matter of fact.
Oh, yes, we did.
You were my boss. And I know the things that, for example, at my time there, you built successfully Dune Lodge.
SGR, yes.
And Onkoshi, all those guys, all those facilities were built at your time. Indeed. Which were very progressive stories, but there were also a lot of challenges there. So I'm thinking now, as an outsider today, looking at SOEs, what exactly is the challenge there? I saw last week, recently, when the national budget was passed, 70% of the budget reserved for SOEs, 70% of it is going to Namibia alone. Then the remaining SOEs in the country must now share within the 30%. This is now the budget that is allocated to the Minister of Public Enterprises. What exactly is wrong with our SOEs? Is it structural? Is it political will? What is the issue?
It's a bitter pain of both worlds. On one side you have the social aspect. On the other side you have the commercial aspect, which focuses on interest of shareholders' return on investment. Now, on the social side, many of these SOEs are, number one, I feel that they've been over-regulated, and therefore they didn't really have enough breathing space to calibrate themselves and respond to strategic market forces that are confronting them. Because when you are in international business or local business, you react fast to decisions. So the other side is that they are providing social developments, which means it's not for profit. In Namibia, it's a casting point. And this, what I say, doesn't take away the inefficiency. I still believe there are some level of inefficiency there. But it's an airline. It operates in a competitive environment. It's connecting Namibia to the rest of the world, because if you remove it, it means you have no direct flight from Frankfurt, you have no direct flight through then Frankfurt to London, you have no direct flights to all these other destinations like Angola and the West Africa and even South Africa. You won't have enough seat numbers. You are literally not viable enough, because Namibia is not a Nigeria where a flight between Abuja and Lagos, there's about 50 every day. And from that aspect, you don't have the numbers to fill up. So you must somehow give up something. So the dividend of Air Namibia does not come from the profit they would make. It comes from connecting the economy to the rest of the world, so that there's more commerce in Namibia. So they are creating commerce opportunities and tourism and others for Namibia to flourish. It's not for themselves to go and give a check and say we are now efficient. But having said that, it's still an airline that operates in that competitive environment, and it needs to be much more competitive. We need to have effectiveness in this SOEs. So if you look at the SOE economy, over-regulation, sometimes lack of performance, incompetence, appointing maybe even people who have never even run an institution before are appointed on boards historically. So what we need to do is to ensure that, and I'm happy that the government has now centralized the entire operation of SOEs, creating the ministry, reducing the value chain in terms of decision making, and then insisting on reforms and business plans. And that is good, but we need to do more. Reforms have to become more and more brutal. People must be taken to task if they are not performing. If they are not performing, fire them. And maybe also, if you look at the role of CEO, I think a CEO, in my view, if I look at it now, they're just glorified general managers who is there to manage the company generally, because at the end of the day, they are accountable to some non-executive boards that are there. We need to do things the modern way. And the modern way is by bringing in the competitive environment where you need decisions fast, bring in executive directors so that your COO, your CFO, and your CEO are literally executive directors on site who are taking executive decision, and therefore they have enough executive authority to execute corporate decisions in line with good corporate governance. And then you now bring in your non-executive directors that are looking after non-essentials like audit committees, chairing, and other non-vibrant committees, in order for you to now succeed and survive. Otherwise, SOEs are a good thing. They can contribute to socioeconomic development. They are doing that. They have employed so many people. And therefore, when you now pay somebody who is performing, you have no anger whatsoever, because they have earned that jerk. But we mustn't be too quick to be negative, because I believe that the changes are coming. They have to be gradual. They have to be legal, and therefore the process of legality. That's why I like what they're doing, bringing in the act and amending it. But we just need to be brutal in terms of SOE development. Otherwise, we will not achieve much.
Indeed. As we wind up this interview, Doc, you serve again in those high structures of the party. And last week on Sunday, the party called a press conference. There was a very legitimate expectation again from both the media and the public in general to say the party ought to speak about this fish rot thing. Party members increasingly getting linked to this thing. I'm asking you not to give me the secrets of your discussions in the Central Committee whenever you meet, but in general terms, what is the feeling there? Why is the party not just setting the record straight to say, look, we are investigating these claims internally, we'll come back to you, or something? They just say, no, we're not talking about that.
Okay, I'll give you a historical answer. And the historical answer is that Swapo has always received donation from goodwill. From good people, party members, outside members. And this has not started now. It started when we were in exile. So that's how we were able to carry out the revolution. For us to stay in those tents in the camps, and the little food that we had, and some of the guns that Swapo used in the liberation struggle. These were donations by individual goodwill, part of the international solidarity. And therefore, it has continued within the context of independence. So people continue to give to the party. Some people give animals. Some people give chickens, and cows. Some people give financial donations. And as I said, both party members and non-party members. So we do not question the source before. We never question the source of where you got the money. How did you earn it? Give us your business plan or your market where you have literally sourced that donation. So we just received donation, but with a goodwill that this was done in kind. It was kind donation, social donation. So we took it. So the whole fish rot issue and donation that the party received must be seen within the context of that scenario, that the party truly had no ill intent, but also truly had no control or anything that has happened within the money that they received. So it was just donating from individuals and organizations. Many times, as you remember, we hosted dinners where organizations are pledging and they are donating. So that is the issue. But having said that, it does not mean that Swapo condone and entertain corruption.
Yeah.
And if the fact that we have two members who were senior ministers, both members of Central Committee and Cabinet, the fact that they are in jail right now awaiting trial, it should show you that the system in Namibia, that the conducive system, which many Namibians never had that privilege, works. That anyone who has been found transgressing the law, no matter who you are, no matter how much connection you think you have, the law will catch up with you. And it's in that context that people must understand that the issue of the party standing up against corruption, it is us who brought about the Anti-Corruption Commission. The Anti-Corruption Commission is a Swapo policy, which was then translated into a government policy, legislated, and then constituted. And it continues to make us proud. If, for example, like you remember, I was prosecuted. I was prosecuted. But unlike the subjectivity where people have been like saying I'm like somehow convicted of corruption, I have never been convicted of corruption in my life. That was it was a conviction of obstruction of justice. So the way that I was brought before court by the system, that I have obstructed justice, anyone who is out there who has committed any other crime, whatever, knowingly or unknowingly, the law must take its course, and we will be very brutal about this. So people who want to build their political portfolio are trying to somehow say that Swapo is corrupt, Swapo is linked to corruption. Those are individuals. An individual will face the full wrath of the law, but not Swapo's organization. That is our policy.
Indeed, indeed. And the final question to you, Doc. You've touched on your own on your own case that you have had to face. You are in Parliament now. You are a lawmaker. There's always divergent views. Can a person who's convicted by a court of law be in court making laws? What is your take on that as we face out this interview?
Which is what people need to realize is that we have a supreme law in Namibia. The supreme law is the Constitution of the Republic. Is sovereign. It's above everything else. So when we report or we analyze things, we must be prepared to be very objective, even if that view doesn't support what you want as a person. Unfortunately, the supreme law has prescribed the requirement upon which you can be a lawmaker. And the supreme law had said that when you have been before a court of law and you are given a fine, you qualify to be a lawmaker, even to be the president of the republic. If you look at the Constitution. So we must also not just say that just because someone has been, let's say, convicted of a obstruction of justice, that we somehow are going to be stopped thinking. It doesn't make me intellectually bankrupt. But also it doesn't mean that I cannot express a remorse to the society that I serve. It's a question of being true to ourselves and coming forth and making our meaningful contribution. And everybody in Namibia or anywhere else, there is no one who can say for sure that since they were born, they have never somehow, been on the wrong side of the law, knowingly or not, whether they were brought before a competent court of law or not. So and also the fact that you are convicted with obstruction of justice doesn't mean now that you can make a contribution. You can make a contribution, and the Constitution supports that, and we bind ourselves to the supreme law. And it even works better, because when I was going through that trial, a lot of people look at it, they think maybe that has taken something from me. I can tell you right now, it has made me stronger. It has made me much more determined to even recognize the importance of our justice system, the importance and independence of our justice system. It has also made me to see, because it went on, remember, from 2011, to see how effective it can be. What are the resources that they require? I went there, some of the courts are falling apart. For example, there were challenges in court, you know, where you could see that the instruments of basically administering justice could sometimes be compromised because they are not probably well funded or well managed. So I have learned so much. I've met so many people whom, you know, have left a long-lasting impression. I've met public prosecutors, I've met lawyers, I've met you know, magistrates, I've met law enforcement officers, and if I have taken, and you learn through the process so that you can be better. Every experience is there to make us better and good citizens, and that's what I moved away with. And if I can give back to a system that has given me so much, both the good and the bad, they're not there to defeat you. They are there to recreate you and make you a better person. And therefore, as you move into the future with hope, you know, vigor, you can achieve the purpose that God has created you to achieve.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Doc, thank you very much for coming through, man.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Always an honor. Sorry, forgive us. I almost shook his hands, but you've seen I didn't shake his hands. I didn't need.
Thank you, Doctor, for coming through. I appreciate it, man.
I appreciate it.
This is Dr. Tobie Aupindi speaking to us today on the show about his journey, his ideologies, his outlook on life. Thank you for watching, and good night.